Hello, everyone, and welcome to my masterclass, Becoming Her. And it is really a class designed to help you step into your most powerful and authentic version. And this masterclass is for women who are ready to rise above self-doubt, release limiting beliefs, and really embody a life of purpose, of confidence, of strength, right? So we'll uncover the layers of who you truly are beyond social expectations and your past experiences, right? So if you've been in one of my other classes, you know I always say this isn't about becoming someone new. It's about reconnecting with the parts of you that have always been there but have been either silenced, dimmed, overlooked, or suppressed, right? So the coming home to yourself aspect, as I call it. Yeah. And for me, this has taken years of inner work. So what I'm about to teach you today has completely changed my own life, right? And I really want it to be like that for you guys as well. And I know what I want, and I know how to get it. And I want you to live by the same concept and get the same results. All right. Now, I'm sure that if you've decided to be in this space, you are part of the women who are simply done, right? You're done being the victim, you're done making excuses for yourself and for others, and you're no longer willing to settle for anything less than what you desire for yourself, right? That is why you're here, I'm assuming. And to be honest, everything changed for me when I really started to understand that you get to have everything that you want by becoming someone who's willing to see it all, right? And that's not always easy. It can be super challenging at times, especially when you first enter this world of this work. Yeah. But what's important here is not that it should be easy. What should be your main aspect of focus is that you take this commitment and tell yourself that it needs to be worth it. That's all. It never should be easy because it's not gonna be easy. And if you've been in my masterclass about what healing really is, I keep telling you it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be shit at times. But is it worth it to you? Do you have that vision? Do you have that goal of who you want to be? You know that the life you desire, the life that you dream of having every day, is on the other side of you doing anything that makes you uncomfortable and anything that makes you feel like you're challenging yourself. If you push through those phases, you will become the one woman you've always wanted to be. That is how you grow, right? That is how you quantum leap. That is how you become more yourself because you leave your comfort zone. You push yourself past your limits. You explore more than what meets your conscious mind, right? So I'm telling you, my space is for you. And this space is also a safe space. Okay, I got you. And that is why this class is free. I want you to have that knowledge, right? I want you to know that it is possible and that it is out there because you deserve it and you owe it to yourself. I'm just helping you get the right knowledge and the right tools to get there, right? Now, let me dive into my first point of the day before I talk too much and just go on yapping. So, take one of your problems that you have right now, whatever it is. It can be a private one that you have with yourself. It can be in a relationship, in a friendship, in your job, with your family, whatever, right? Whatever the problem you seem to have right now is, it's usually just a side effect of a bigger problem that you have, right? So, like when you have symptoms, they're just little indicators of something bigger, some bigger illness that you have, right? It's the same with our problems. They're symptoms of something bigger going on. And what I mean by that is whatever problem is coming up for you, let me take an example out of my own life that I've experienced actually in the past. So, let's say you're dealing with a friend who repeatedly asks for favors or claims a lot of your time, right? You might feel resentful because it seems like they don't respect your limits or Maybe they don't respect your schedule, whatever it is to you, right? But if we dig deeper, the real issue isn't that they are intentionally disregarding your needs. Your core issue is that you feel uncomfortable setting boundaries and saying no. Maybe it is because you're afraid of disappointing them. Maybe you feel that they will be upset with you. Or maybe you're even afraid that it will end up in a fight, right? It doesn't matter where it comes from. What matters is that you found the root of the problem. So you need to change that, right? And this avoidance often comes from your conditioning of being a people pleaser, right? Those conflicts often come from your conditioning of being a people pleaser, which has taught us, like we all know, to avoid conflict, prioritize others' feelings, and be nice at all costs, right? Be that nice girl, be that good girl, be that favorable person that everybody loves. And it's what one of my past mentors calls the good girl conditioning. So the real challenge isn't their lack of respect, but it is about you reclaiming your voice and allowing yourself to honor your needs. The people pleasing has conditioned you to feel uneasy about expressing what you need directly, speaking up, right? But when you begin to release that conditioning, you'll find it easier to set healthy boundaries and you'll find it easier to set them without feeling guilt or fear, right? And believe me when I say I've been a master of people pleasing. Oh my Lord. I used to play the biggest role when it comes to keeping yourself small, when it comes to following others around, when it comes to bending myself until I couldn't no more, just to stay on someone's good side, right? Just to please their needs over my own. And now that I think about it, I should have really gotten an Oscar for that role, right? That's how crazy it was. And it's not been that long that I've stopped doing it, right? It's only a few and have not even a handful of years, right? But my point being, this conditioning, these limiting beliefs that are underneath your perceptions, that are underneath what your conscious mind perceives, they are what is hindering you from actually getting what you want. They are blocking you from creating the life that you desire. They are blocking you from creating anything that you want, from manifesting anything that you desire. And this is why I'm so passionate about this work and about mentoring you on your healing journey, on your journey to become a fucking powerhouse, because I have been there as well, right? I went through it too. But I've come out of it so strong, and I want you to do the same thing. All right? So from now on, anytime you talk down to yourself, anytime you make yourself small by saying, but I'm not this, or I'm not that, I can't do this, and so on, blah, 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 remember, you are limiting yourself. It doesn't matter who you want to blame, it's you. All right? And for what? So that others don't judge you, so that so that you don't step on anyone else's toes, on others' toes, so that you don't overshadow somebody else who is actually supposed to be so much more than you. You are playing by their rules, honey. You are people pleasing. You are being that so-called good girl, right? You are dismissing your whole self for the benefit of others. And believe me, I've been there. So you're not confident? Cool. So you're insecure? Cool. So you're just shy? Cool. So you're just not like that? Cool. Now, instead of following the narrative that you aren't supposed to be like that, it just wasn't meant for you. This one girl is better at it than you, or you're just scared to do so. Cool. How can we change that? How do we change that? Now I want you to take out pen and paper. Let's break it down for you, right? So when you are people pleasing, actually, like, let me take a sip of water before we do that. So, so when you are people pleasing, you are making yourself smaller, right? You act based on what your parents, based on what your peers, your past caregivers, your friends, overall society expects from you, right? You put the need of others before your own. So you keep saying yes to all the things, even if you don't want to. You always make the right choices just to not upset anybody. And you are always this sweet girl and this good girl and always so nice. And believe me, I've been there, I've done that. I'm still nice, but I have my own boundaries. You're always the one no one can ever say anything bad about because you just comply to everything, right? And you do those things because you believe that's just what it's supposed to be like. That's just what it is. That's just what you're supposed to do in order to be accepted, in order to be liked, in order to be seen, in order to keep others happy, right? In order to have all those things, you feel like you need to sacrifice yourself constantly. But let me tell you something. Don't you forget about something important during that process, which is actually the most important aspect of all. I'm gonna give you a minute to think. Yourself, right? All of this is happening at the expense of yourself. So who are you actually? I bet you don't even fully know if you really think about it. If you're really asking yourself, who are you? So what we're going to do now, I'm breaking the different characteristics of a people pleaser down for you. So take notes, see what might resonate for you, and I want you to really get an articulation for the different concepts, just so it's easier for you to understand and overcome. Okay? So the characteristics of a people pleaser are: it's someone who is conditioned to please others, obviously. It's someone who often avoids standing up for herself when it comes to authority figures. Like, for example, a boss, a teacher, a parent, anyone she perceives to have more authority or status. It can even be a friend, right? Sometimes you put others before you, even if it's friends. You just have those dynamics. I've been there. She tends to be highly compliant, so following rules without question. She strives to avoid causing conflict or difficult conversations, right? So you're not able to speak up. You're just going with it to avoid any type of fight or tension. In line with this goes that she refrains from expressing opinions that might be seen as controversial, and she doesn't challenge others. She doesn't speak up in disagreements. She'll just go with it. She'll even put a smile on when she's not feeling happy. She laughs at jokes she doesn't even genuinely find funny. So just to keep things comfortable, right? Again, it's that aspect of pleasing others, of making others happy. She only talks about topics that are considered safe or align with the other person's interest. She often waits for permission before taking action, sometimes without even realizing it, right? So this means she might delay or withhold her own actions until someone else has given her the okay or the green light, right? And again, this can be unconsciously. So if you were to ask somebody on whether they liked something and they say no, that then means it's a no for you as well. All right, that's all it means. Without even questioning it, you're like, oh, you're right, it's a no, right? I'm not going to do that. All right, yeah, I shouldn't be doing that. All right, yeah, I should rather do this or think like that. Then I don't even know how many we've had so far. Then she avoids stepping outside of the lines or breaking the norms. So conforming instead to what's expected of her. And she may suppress or ignore her own desires if they don't align with the expectations she's been conditioned to follow. So honestly, pause here if you need to and take a moment to write down any of these characteristics that resonate with you, okay? In the meantime, we'll explore some common types of people-pleasing roles that people often take on. So we're beginning to articulate what people-pleasing, what that conditioning may look like in your life. All right. And as I go through each one, I want you to take note on anything that resonates with you again. So traits, tendencies, or even situations where you see yourself in. Okay. The first one is the partner with no needs. So in this role, the people-pleasing partner, so the people pleaser, suppresses her own needs and desires to keep her partner happy. So she avoids voicing her preferences. She avoids voicing her concerns. She avoids requests because she's afraid of creating conflict or being seen as demanding. So, as a partner with no needs, she prioritizes her partner's wants over her own, which in turn often feels like her own needs don't matter. So, her sense of self-worth, you can already imagine, is tied to being accommodating and the self-sacrificing partner who keeps the peace, right? So, you're the peacekeeper. The second one is the do-it-all partner, all right? So this role is similar to the mother that sacrifices everything, but it centers around romantic relationships. The sacrificing mother will come later. The do-it-all partner, she sacrifices her own dreams, her own needs, and her own desires for the sake of her partner's comfort or goals, right? Maybe you've been there. I know I was. She might be the one who always accommodates or handles the tasks and bends over backward to support her partner, right? Even at her own expense. Even if the partner doesn't give her the same effort. And in this role, validation comes from being seen as the perfect partner, right? You get praise for that behavior. You get compliments for that behavior. What grade of a girlfriend you are. So you're the perfect partner who is willing to go above and beyond for them, which often, though, leads her or you to ignore your own needs, right? Third up, we have the friend without any boundaries. So with no boundaries. And this people pleaser tends to say yes to every request, even if it means sacrificing her time, her energy, or her personal needs, right? So when a friend asks for help, she'll agree. And while, yes, you should help your friends, respect yourself more, all right? Even if it takes up her entire day or disrupts her only chance to rest. So the people pleaser, she feels that she gains acceptance and friendship by being always available, right? But often she forgets that she actually feels drained or resentful because she hasn't protected her own boundaries. Okay, I've been there. I've been at a point where I didn't even study for my papers just because I wanted to be a great friend going out to party with other friends. Otherwise, I would have been lame. Otherwise, I would have been too focused on school. And guess what? I got a very bad grade, and it took me the whole year to recover that. Is that worth it? And that's just a grade. It could be something more serious and more relevant. But now I'm thinking, Vanessa, why the fuck did you do that? That was not worth it. The evening wasn't even that great. Especially when there's alcohol involved, you need to ask yourself questions, my lady. So the fourth one, the cooperative employee slash the friend who's actually a follower. Okay, so at work, let's start with the employee. This people-pleasing role, so this people pleaser, it usually manifests in someone who will always say yes, again, always say yes, but this time not to activities, but this time to extra tasks. Okay, so to cover shifts for others, for example, to again go above and beyond for someone else, for work, even when it disrupts their personal life or well-being. Okay, so the cooperative employee wants to be seen as helpful, wants to be seen as very dependable, as reliable, as selfless. So she's quick to volunteer, even if she has other plans or the added workload causes more stress for her. And the same goes for the friend who is actually the follower. So again, you say yes to everything, you follow them around like a little puppy, you are basically acting as a little minion. And if you've ever watched Gossip Girl, the real one, not the shitty new version, you know that Blair always has her little minions who follow her around, right? They do everything for her. They are there to do her dirty work, to agree with everything, to just follow her around and make her life easier. Yeah, that'd be you in that case. So overall here, validation comes from being the one who always saves the day and who values team approval over her own boundaries, who values the approval of somebody she sees as being above her. Okay. The fifth one I'm going to talk about is being daddy's little girl, right? So in this role, the people pleaser does everything possible to meet her father's or any another close authority figures, right? Standards, preferences, and needs, often prioritizing their own opinion over her own happiness. So she may stay, for example, in a relationship she's not happy with because her father approves of her partner or because he has a strong opinion about her choices, right? Maybe you've been in that situation. So the fear of losing her father's acceptance or disappointing him can make it difficult for her to follow her own path, leading her to decisions based on others' wishes rather than her own needs, right? So again, people pleasing, you put somebody else above you. 6, which is the overachiever in the family, all right? So the people pleaser who takes on this role feels like she must excel at everything she does at home to receive love, to receive validation, to receive acceptance. And growing up, she learned that when she was successful, she received the most approval from parents or general authority figures, right? Whoever was your caregiver. And this could mean excelling academically, so getting high grades, maybe winning in sports, or holding titles like team captain or student leader, right? And while all of those aspects are not wrong, like you can strive for excellence and excel at things and be the best and have this big vision of yourself. It's the intention behind it, of why you're doing it. Are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing what the overachiever does, which is she believes that in order to be worthy, she must constantly meet external expectations and show the world her achievements by often sacrificing her own desires to uphold this image, right? If you're doing it for yourself, you have nobody's expectations to reach, to live up to, only your own, right? So if you fail, you don't feel like less. You just know you have to do better. But if the overachiever fails, she feels not worthy. There's low self-worth, no self-belief. She's a failure, right? Do you see the difference? So then last one I want to talk about is the sacrificing mother. So I'm obviously not a mother, but I believe this one is very obvious and very common, especially in the early ages when all women were supposed to do was stay at home, cook for their husbands and family, and take care of the children, right? But even today, it's still happening a lot because it's just ingrained generationally and people haven't healed, women haven't healed. Many women take on this role by internalizing the idea that a good mother must put her children's needs ahead of her own at all times, right? And this people-pleasing mother derives validation, so gets validation and praise from being perceived as so selfless and dedicated. Often you hear remarks like, I don't know how you do it, or you're so amazing and giving, right? And if you see this pattern in yourself or a parent figure, this sacrificing mother role could be playing out for you. It often means that neglecting personal goals or self-care because the people pleaser feels validated by their identity as the one who gives it all, right? And while you can be a great mother and give everything to your child, again, just like before I mentioned before, it's about the intention that's behind it. Do you do it for validation or do you do it because you really want your child's needs to be met and to give them all that you can, right? How do you feel after? Or how do you feel when you cannot meet these expectations? Do you still feel like a good mother or not? Now, I want to encourage you to think about which one of these roles resonates with you the most. Is there one or are there a few that seem familiar to you? I know for myself, I have definitely displayed more than just one over the years and even often at the same time, depending on the situation, right? So you can see that it varies a lot. And reflecting on those roles can give you insight into patterns you've adopted over time, right? So take a moment to write down which people-pleasing role, which archetype here you identify with the most. And then I want you to list 3 to 5 specific examples of times you've conformed to that role. This exercise will help you understand how your people-pleasing conditionings may be influencing your decisions and interactions, right? And the truth is that you can never experience true fulfillment while the people pleaser is still alive within you, or while you're still holding onto that identity. I've tried it. I've been there so many times and found myself back being a people pleaser again. And that is why it just never worked out for me until now. And this is because the people pleaser is conditioned to prioritize others' needs, which leaves little room for genuine freedom for you, right? Which leaves little room for priorities like yourself. Makes sense. So true freedom means having complete sovereignty. What do you call that word? Sovereignty? Is that the right word? You know what I mean. Having complete control over your life, let's say it like that, right? Having complete power over your life. The choices you make, the way you live. True freedom only means that. But people pleasing and this kind of internal freedom, they cannot coexist, right? It's like they repel each other. So you cannot be a people pleaser and at the same time experience that deep sense of inner liberation, that deep sense of truly being you, that sense of coming home to yourself, like I always say, right? And our goal today is to help you release the need to please others and step fully into your own power and come back to yourself. So your life reflects all that you truly deserve and desire. Okay? So now we've established why things are the way they are, right? But I want to dive a little deeper into what types of conditionings there are to people pleasers. So the deep impact of people pleasing on who we believe we have to be to feel accepted and valued. Okay? Because at the end of the day, we're all still humans, right? And as a human being, as human beings, we have a natural drive to belong, to be liked, to feel that we fit in, right? From an early age on, we're taught, often unconsciously, what behaviors, what traits, what expressions are acceptable and which ones aren't, right? Which ones are approved and which ones aren't. So between the ages of 0 to 7, or 0 to 10 even sometimes, we internalize these cues from our environment, from our peers, from our caregivers, whoever, everywhere, which shapes a self-image based on approval and avoiding disapproval, right? So during this time, we start to develop a self-concept of who we should be, not necessarily who we truly are. And based on what we're praised for, based on what we're criticized for. And this conditioning, it becomes the foundation of our belief system, right? It influences how we see ourselves and the world. So we begin to create beliefs not just from what we're explicitly told, but from everything we see, everything we hear, everything we experience. So now, the main adult figures in our lives, our parents, our teachers, our caregivers, whoever it was for you, they play a huge role in this conditioning. They were shaping our sense of what's acceptable or unacceptable, and shaping not only our behavior, but who we believe we must be to feel worthy and to feel loved, right? And I don't want you to go out there and be like, blame on you, blame everybody else. Like, shame you, my parents, you didn't do better, you should have done better, it's on you, blah, 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 blah. That's not what it's about. You can recognize where it comes from, but it's your responsibility now to change it. It's not their fault. You won't get far with blaming them. Okay? Take accountability because you are the only person who can change yourself, who can better yourself. Right? So, back to what I was saying. This conditioning particularly impacts women, often sending messages that certain expressions are wrong or undesirable, right? It obviously also affects men, but I'm a women's coach, so I'm going to talk from that perspective. And we learn that raising our voice or showing frustration or overall our feelings makes us dramatic, right? That speaking our truth is either mean or unladylike, right? That prioritizing our own needs is selfish, and that doing something wrong makes us a disappointment or even a failure, right? And these beliefs, they can sink in deeply. So much that as adults, so now we find ourselves suppressing parts of who we are just to stay within the bounds of what's acceptable to others. So you're living by others' expectations. Now, I want to talk about the role of people pleasing here, okay? Because the truth is, people pleasing behaviors are often encouraged because they serve others as well as ourselves. For example, if you identify as a people pleaser, those around you may see you as agreeable, as easygoing, as adaptable, right? As this favorable person, as this good girl, as this nice girl. But you're someone who goes along with the flow, who rarely says no, and doesn't typically express personal boundaries or needs. And because of this, others may find comfort or convenience in your behavior, right? They may feel assured that you'll say yes to requests, that you prioritize your needs, their needs, sorry, and keep peace at all costs. So they actually really benefit from you being this way, right? But beyond just meeting others' expectations, people pleasing also benefits you. Let's be honest. There's a strong secondary gain in maintaining these behaviors because they often lead to increased love, into increased validation, to increased acceptance, to increased feelings of belonging. And each time you prioritize others, suppress your own needs, or say yes when you really want to say no, there's likely a sense of validation and connection that comes with it. Even if at the end of the day you don't choose yourself, you still get validation. You still get to feel good, but not because of yourself, but because of others. So you may feel loved by a partner when you put their wishes before your own, right? When you maybe you're more valued by your friends when you're always available to support them. Or maybe you're more accepted by your family when you meet their expectations rather than pursuing what you want for yourself. Right? So this secondary gain reinforces these people-pleasing conditionings, since it signals that being agreeable and being self-sacrificing leads to acceptance, right? It sends a signal to your brain like, okay, if I behave this way, I'm getting this gain. This is my benefit if I maintain this behavior, right? It creates a cycle where keeping up those traits, maintaining those traits feels necessary for approval, which then reinforces the belief that this is how we should be to belong, right? And what I want you to do now is ask yourself how people pleasing shows up in your life, okay? And who might benefit from these behaviors around you. See if there are people who rely on your lack of boundaries. See if there are people who rely on your self-sacrifice, on your silence to feel comfortable, right? Often we shut up just to please others. Often we don't speak up or spill the tea because others would not like it, even though it would benefit our own needs more and we would have more self-respect for ourselves. And how has this conditioning encouraged you to play a role for others' benefit rather than expressing who you truly are? Okay? Now, while you reflect, I want you to think about the ways that this conditioning has shaped you and how stepping out of these roles could open the door to living more authentically for you. And I mean that not just as someone who meets others' needs, but really as someone who honors their own desires, who honors their own goals and sense of self, right? So now I want you to take a moment and to just think about a woman in your life who brings out a strong emotional response in you. It might sound like an unusual question, but really let yourself sit with it. Okay? Think about a woman in your life who brings out a strong emotional response in you. So consider someone either from your past or your present, doesn't matter, who evokes a strong reaction within you. And I want you to really think about whether it's someone close to you, like a family member, or someone from another area of your life. Like maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a colleague at work, maybe it's an old classmate or a current classmate, maybe it's just a neighbor, maybe it's your best friend, or maybe it's just someone you know and see daily or often. It really could be anyone, right? That's my point. Could even be your mom, someone else in your family, a girlfriend, a coworker, again, whoever, who stands out in your mind. Think about that woman. And once you have that person in mind, I want you to ask yourself, what is it specifically about this person, about this woman's behavior, about this woman's personality, or even about her self-expression that triggers such a strong reaction within me? Maybe it's the way that she expresses herself freely. Maybe it's her confidence. Maybe it's her tendency to do things differently than you would, right? It could be her boldness. It could be her disregard for social expectations, right? That she's the opposite than you, from you, that she doesn't care about what other people think, that she doesn't need that validation, your validation. Maybe it's her tendency to take up space unapologetically, or it's something other than you do, the opposite of what you do. And I want you to get really clear on what it is that bothers or unsettles you about her actions and about her demeanor. All right, that's the most important part. Now, if you need to take a moment, you can just pause here and really reflect. It's important. So stop the recording and sit back here for a minute. And once you're ready, we'll dive into what is behind these feelings and why this reaction is actually coming up for you. Okay, so let's explore why certain behaviors and others might be triggering for you. So often, when someone's behavior evokes a strong emotional response, it's because they're reflecting back an aspect of ourselves that we haven't fully embraced or integrated yet, right? So for this exercise, I want you to think about this particular woman and what it is about her that really bothers you. All right? So for example, you might believe that this woman is loud, or this woman is selfish, or this woman is arrogant, or she's judgmental. Whatever it is, she doesn't care about me. Whatever it is, right? I want you to write it down. And now, after identifying that specific behavior, I want you to add the phrase, and so am I. And so am I. And see how that feels. Right? I know this exercise is probably very uncomfortable for you. You might be completely triggered right now. You might hate me right now. Believe me, I know your ego makes you feel like you're about to throw up. Your throat tightens up, like, yeah, yeah. Right? But it's often where some of the deepest self-reflection takes place. All right? That's why this work is important. Only if you get disgustingly honest with yourself, you can break free of all these limiting beliefs, of all these limits that you have around yourself, and really become the woman who gets to have it all, who gets to create the life that she desires, right? There's no way around it, at least not long term, at least not in every aspect, okay? So, for example, if I were to say my friend is selfish, I would follow it up with, and so am I. Now, I would sit with this thought and ask myself if there's any truth in it, right? And there's most probably moments when I too am selfish, even if it's in subtle ways, or maybe I fear that aspect within myself. Whatever it is for you, but this process of reflection, it can reveal several areas where you may judge or suppress similar qualities in yourself, right? It often reflects something back that is already within ourselves. So this concept is essential to understand because people in our lives, they are mirrors to us, okay? They they show you where you haven't yet found freedom within yourself, where you haven't yet found acceptance within yourself. You see, we tend to attract experiences and people who highlight aspects of your inner world. Okay? You attract experiences and people who highlight aspects of your inner world that you haven't yet fully accepted, that you haven't yet fully brought into light. So When someone's behavior triggers you, for example, they're being loud or they're being bold or just unapologetically themselves, right? That's already enough. It's really an opportunity to ask yourself, what does this say about me? What part of me, what part of myself am I not allowing to be expressed because of this? What part of myself am I not expressing unapologetically? And this is where the idea of projection comes in, right? And projection is an unconscious defense mechanism where you attribute your own unwanted traits, emotions, or thoughts onto someone else, right? You blame someone else for your emotional reaction right now. You're putting it on someone else. So it's simply a way of coping with these uncomfortable feelings by casting them outward rather than acknowledging them within yourselves, right? And often this process happens below your level of conscious awareness. So you don't even realize you're doing it. So instead of sitting with difficult emotions like jealousy, or let's say insecurity, or maybe even frustration, you unconsciously project these feelings onto others, shifting the focus away from yourself, right? Just so you don't have to look at your own shit. So maybe think about moments when you felt triggered by someone's behavior. That trigger usually brings a super intense and uncomfortable response, right? It feels very shitty. It can feel like sometimes anxiety or sadness or overwhelm or resentment or anger or just like that tension bubbling beneath your surface, right? Overall, you mostly feel triggered to some extent, though, right? And instead of examining where these feelings are coming from within, you just find it easier to label the other person as the problem. Because then you don't have to look at it. Then it's just like, oh, it's on them, not my problem, right? It's always other people who are the problem. It's never you. So projection constantly allows you to deflect from your own discomfort. And again, it makes it feel like the issue is external, when in reality, it's in here. It's in here. It's internal. Okay. And that's one takeaway, one big takeaway for you today, that it comes from within. It's never external, almost never external. Most of the time, you can change it just by changing your internal world. So it's basically a protective response that prevents you from confronting the emotions that person is reflecting back to you because you're simply not able to hold it, right? That's just what it is. But here's where we can start to make a powerful shift. And that is why I'm here, right? Rather than falling into a pattern of blame or judgment, you can actually pause and just ask yourself, what is this person mirroring to me right now? What is it that I'm feeling right now? And why? Where is it coming from? So imagine for a moment that you couldn't default to blaming or making someone else wrong, right? If you couldn't deflect, deny, or even play the victim, think about what would that person's behavior reveal about your own inner world. What part of yourself is this situation inviting you to explore or acknowledge? And be fucking honest with yourself. Don't play games, because then you're just gonna run in circles like a chicken without a head. It's not gonna bring you forward, okay? It keeps you stuck. So you better be honest. Now, this self-reflective approach, it allows you to approach triggers as opportunities, right? It's simple. So when you feel yourself judging or reacting strongly to someone, it's often a sign that something deeper is coming up within you, right? So getting curious about this inner reaction is really a chance to move to greater self-awareness for you. For example, if you're triggered by someone's confidence, right? Next time it happens, simply ask yourself whether there's a part of you that desires to express confidence but feels held back, right? Because by allowing yourself to sit with that discomfort and explore its roots, explore where it comes from and why it's there, you can finally start to integrate parts of yourself that you may have disowned or suppressed, right? So, overall, taking this responsibility is a transformative step in becoming a more whole and empowered version of yourself, right? And when you would just stop blaming external circumstances or other people, you would be stepping into your own power. You would be taking ownership of your own beliefs, of your behaviors, of your reactions. Okay, so this shift really allows you to take full responsibility for your growth and in turn to step into a life that reflects what you truly want. Okay. And also, another thing is when you judge a part of yourself as bad or wrong, I know you often go to great lengths to avoid identifying with it. So, projection is your way of keeping that distance, placing undesirable traits onto others so you don't have to confront them within yourself, right? But if you can learn to pause and just get curious, these moments of projection can become mirrors to you, which are going to help you uncover parts of yourself you're ready to heal, embrace, and ultimately also accept. Okay? And that should be the end goal, right? I mean, integrating all of those blind spots and making them your biggest assets when you want that, right? So, now one essential concept I want to highlight is that as humans, we embody all traits, right? All expressions, all emotions. I mean, really think about it. Everyone. And I'm saying everyone has the potential for every characteristic, right? Every so-called good and every so-called bad quality. Every strength, every vulnerability. Everything. And we're all such a complex blend of these traits, right? So the only reason you express some traits more openly while suppressing others has to do with your conditioning. And from a young age, based on what you were taught, what you saw, or how you were treated, you learned which traits were acceptable and which were unacceptable in order to feel loved, in order to feel like you belong, in order to feel accepted by the people around you. Right? And again, it doesn't matter who or what they came from, how major or minor you believe it is for you. You have integrated limiting beliefs like those as well. All right? And this conditioning, it has shaped what you allow yourself to be, what you allow yourself to do, what you allow yourself to express, as well as what you hide or repress. So if you were raised to believe that certain traits, let's say like crying when you are sad or angry, was wrong, you likely learned to avoid those traits and instead over-identify with their opposites, right? So, for example, if you were taught that by crying anytime you're sad or angry, you were being dramatic, or you weren't supposed to cry, you were supposed to get your shit together, you might overcompensate by trying to be strong, by trying to be quiet, by trying to be emotionless, right? You might have learned that appearing tough earns you more approval and more love. So you embrace that role, but it's actually not who you are underneath, right? And that's where I was too. I'm still crying a lot because that's my natural outlet. That's my healthy outlet. That's how I release emotions. That's how I release pressure. But I remember as a kid, I got judged a lot for it. Even now, sometimes people make fun of me, but now I don't care. But as a kid, Oh my Lord, the world ended for me when somebody made fun of me, when somebody made a rude comment about me not crying, when somebody called me a baby, when even my girlfriends were judging me on it, right? I remember there was this one time where my grandma died, and I was sitting at school. I still had to go to school that day because she died overnight, and I still had to go to school that day, and I was sitting there crying at some point because I just couldn't hold it in anymore, and others were judging me for it. Like, imagine, I'm not even allowed to cry when somebody of my family dies. Like, what the hell is wrong with you people? You know? Like, why is that being normalized? And I know you're just children, but those beliefs follow you into adulthood, right? And there's still adults doing the same shit. I still, a few years back, or even last year, I cried, and I remember somebody telling me that every time I cry, it triggers them. So I shouldn't do it anymore. Like, why is that my problem? That's yours. You're being triggered. And that's my point of today. If you're triggered, it's your responsibility to change it, right? Now, here's where projection often comes into play also. Because when you encounter someone who openly embodies a trait that you have repressed, such as a woman who is confident in her feelings, or like I just said, somebody who who expresses themselves by crying, so openly expresses her emotions overall, it can feel triggering to you, right? That reaction happens because she's mirroring back to you an aspect of yourself that you've disowned. So her behavior shines a light on the parts of you that at some point you decided were unacceptable. Okay? And somewhere in your past, you learned that it wasn't safe or desirable to express those parts of yourself. So you suppressed them and you leaned into their opposites, right? There was a time, at some point I started not caring about it, but before that, there was a time where I tried to suppress every time I cried, every time I wanted to cry, right? I tried to hold it in, and your face gets all red and you get all snotty and all that. It's not nice. And it feels even shittier when you cannot let it out. And as adults, these unexpressed parts can lead to strong reactions. So, for example, when you see somebody embracing their loudness or embracing their confidence or being bold, it might bring up discomfort or even resentment for you. But these feelings are indicators of traits that you have suppressed, which then creates a powerful mirror that shows you the parts of yourself that you haven't yet embraced. Okay, so rather than viewing these triggers as something negative and as something that others are bothering you, see them as opportunities for your own self-discovery, right? Don't blame it on them, like, oh, they made me mad or they made me feel this way. They didn't make you feel shit. You are the one in control. They are only showing you who you truly are underneath the conditioning, which offers you a pathway back to your authentic self. So you should actually thank them for triggering you, right? And I'm going to give you an example of what I grew up with. So I grew up with, which were a lot of insecurities, right? I used to be a little bit of a tomboy during middle school. I was always outside, always up to no good, and all the things. And I got along with kind of everybody. But when it came to girls, I felt very inferior, right? I remember I was one of the guys every time, and I remember we had this very toxic girl group in middle school. And every few weeks or months, some of us were fighting, and while I was playing very tough, and like I had a say in the group, I was often made to feel very small at the same time. I didn't feel very confident in my voice. I didn't feel confident in what I had to say. And I didn't really feel confident in retaliating in a discussion, all right, or in a fight. I didn't really know how to navigate it. I felt very unsafe. It didn't really feel safe within myself. I didn't really feel safe within myself. That's the right way to say it. And the girls around me, were being more dominant in their voices, they were being more dominant in their beliefs, they were being like the rules of our group or whatever. It just made me believe that I had no say. I didn't have a voice. I was never going to be a leader, right? So I was always the tough follower. Like I had a great mask. Like I mentioned before in the types of people pleasing, I was the one in every friend group who was actually the follower, right? I masked as a wolf, but I was actually a sheep. And I became used to feeling triggered like crazy on a daily, right? Because obviously my beliefs attracted very dominant and loud people into my life to teach me lessons. So many girls who seemed confident, now I know it obviously was just a coping mechanism and a facade for them as well, probably. Maybe not all of them, but at the time, they seemed so much bigger than me. They seemed so much stronger and so much more secure in themselves, right? And yet, even while being triggered, I still follow them. Because at the end of the day, I still wanted to be their friend. I still wanted to be liked. I still wanted to be approved. I still wanted to be loved. I still wanted to be accepted. I just wanted to be like them, right? And it's funny to see now because I carried this from middle school all the way through high school. And my belief never changed during that time, no matter how tough or confident I seemed, no matter what popular kids I hung out with at school, because I was that kind of girl to hang out with the popular kids. No matter how many people knew my name as a teenager, I always felt inferior, right? So the facade I gave was the complete opposite, but I always felt like I had no voice, especially because my voice is so quiet, right? It's very smooth, it's very soft. I don't have a strong voice vocally like other women do, and that's totally okay. I've made my peace with it. I actually like enjoy it. But it just added to that insecurity at the time, right? And believe it or not, but it really took me until I was in my 20s now that I realized, hey, wait a minute, I can be my own person. I can have power and I can have control over my own life and over my own choices, my behaviors, my thoughts, all of it, and so on, right? And these people actually came into my life to show me that what is within me, these limiting beliefs, are exactly what they say they are. They are limiting me, right? And it took me up until 2020 to figure that out when I was 21. So the people who trigger you often provide the most valuable mirrors for your growth, right? So I don't hate them, even if at times it was hell for me and it felt like torture and I felt super uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, they were just showing me what's really inside of me, what I was pretending to be, right? So they were just triggering me, and it was nothing really bad that they did to me. It was just kind of poking beneath the surface, you know? So when you examine what these reactions reveal about your own conditioning, you're actually giving the chance to break free from outdated beliefs. And you are actually giving the chance to step into your fuller expression of who you actually are. So beyond who you were conditioned to be or what you were conditioned to believe, right? Because another thing is that your conditioning often creates a sharp divide between the good and the so-called bad. So in this case, the favorable person, the favorable girl, the good girl, and the bad girl, let's phrase it like that, within you, right? So the good girl is praised for being polite. She's praised for being always quiet and helpful and well-spoken, easygoing, maybe even submissive. So think back to your childhood. If you shared your toys, if you were well behaved, if you stayed quiet when expected, I'm sure you most likely received a lot of praise, didn't you? And so these behaviors became associated with approval, with love. You attached acceptance to them. But on the other hand, traits linked with the bad girl. So let's say, for example, like my example, crying or being outspoken or loud or, yeah, full of emotions, selfish, opinionated, whatever it was for you, you were often met with disapproval, with dislike, with being excluded, with being dismissed, right? And you might have vivid memories of being told off for being too loud or being too honest or even just simply standing up for yourself, which is a normal thing to do. Maybe when you were honest about your feelings, you were labeled as rude or difficult to deal with. Or if you chose to not to share, you were called selfish. And this early feedback teaches you to suppress certain expressions and adopt others to receive love and acceptance. Okay, so you can see that it's obvious that as a result, you learn to embrace only the acceptable parts of yourself, which then makes you internalize the idea that some traits are good and others are bad. So through that, this conditioning makes you align with behaviors that you deem as good, such as being agreeable or just being passive, being a follower, whatever it is, while rejecting the traits that you see as bad. So real confidence and assertiveness, for example. So you may have learned to stay quiet because you were taught that it's wrong to be loud, or to be agreeable because you were taught that it's bad to have a strong opinion. All right? You were taught that it's bad to be straightforward, to say it the way it is or the way you think it. But over time, separation limits you, creating inner conflict and making it difficult to express your full self, right? So now I want you to take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. And I want you to ask yourself, what behaviors and what traits were encouraged in you and which were criticized? It doesn't remember if that was when you were a child or a teenager or even now. And I want you to consider the patterns that you see in yourself now. Okay? So do you avoid assertiveness because it was labeled rude? Or do you hesitate to take up space because it was seen as too much? Try asking yourself different questions to really reflect on your beliefs and behaviors. Okay, and I'm sure you'll uncover some type of patterns. Because by examining those conditioned beliefs, you can begin to understand how they shaped your self-expression and where there's room to reclaim the parts of you that were left behind in the name of approval, right? So you can stop here because the next thing I want you to do is take a moment to consider the version of yourself that you felt you had to become in order to be loved, in order to be accepted, in order to be praised. Because this version, which is full of that people pleasing, has been shaped by your conditioning, has been shaped by the behaviors and the traits you were taught would make you worthy of approval and connection, right? So I want to encourage you to write down what this people pleasing expression looks like for you. Think about the characteristics that made you feel accepted in your family, all right, in your social circles, or in your community, and how these traits became embedded in your self-image over time. Because the traits and the beliefs and the behaviors that you had to change in order to fit in, they became your shadows over time, all right? And in shadow work, we refer to the shadow as the parts of ourselves or of yourself that are hidden, that have been rejected or that have been suppressed because they've been deemed as negative or bad or undesirable, right? So these shadows, they represent the traits we don't feel safe to embrace because at some point we were conditioned to believe they were wrong. So when we talk about the people-pleasing conditionings, we're talking about those traits that you're in a good girl, that you're in a nice girl, doesn't allow herself to express. And again, examples might include traits like being selfish or being assertive or being judgmental, being outspoken, being loud, overly confident, sexual, even ambitious. Insert your thing. But these shadow traits can feel uncomfortable to confront. And you may even feel physical discomfort or resistance just seeing some of them, right? Words like selfish or opinionated or rude. It may feel off limits because they were conditioned out of you from an early age on. So maybe you were taught that it was wrong to prioritize your own needs, which would result in you being selfish. Maybe you were taught that it was wrong to speak up, which would make you opinionated. Or just to relax instead of always being productive, which would make you lazy instead. Right? So each of these suppressed qualities represents a part of yourself that you haven't allowed in order to maintain the role of the favorable girl. And sorry, that you haven't allowed in order to please others. Right? Now, I want you again to take a moment right here to reflect on which of these traits you've internalized as wrong or bad. And I want you to write down anything that resonates as traits you might have disowned or avoided embodying. Because as I said, these shadow aspects, they are usually where your growth lies. Because they reveal the parts of you that you haven't fully integrated. And when you repress these traits, you become hyper-focused on avoiding them, right? So often you'll end up overcompensating with their opposites. For example, if you were taught that being assertive is rude, you might have become excessively passive or accommodating, even to your own detriment, right? So again, see the pattern of pleasing others over yourself because it would have felt uncomfortable for you maybe to hold on to something that was deemed as unacceptable. And I want you to consider too the different people-pleasing roles we discussed earlier. So maybe you were the do-it-all partner, or maybe you were the friend who was actually the follower, or maybe you were the overachiever in your family, still are. No matter which one, but each of these identities might have required you to suppress certain traits to maintain the acceptable image, right? And this suppression leads to a constant state of inner conflict where you feel as though you're not fully free to express who you are. Which is understandable because, I mean, you're still tied to the version of yourself that was praised for meeting these different expectations, right? Which now brings us to the root of why you often feel stuck. And I want you to understand that as humans, our need for love and our need for acceptance and connection, it is instinctual, right? So from the moment we're born, we seek attachment and belonging as a means of survival. I mean, we've been in the womb for 9 months, where we were protected, where we were safe, where we were warm. And then we're this infant. And during our first years, our parents are supposed to be our safety net, right? They are the ones we attach ourselves to. And the older we get, the more we get outside, the more people enter our lives, the more we attach the meaning of belonging and needing them to survive onto them. So we unconsciously adapt our behavior and we often suppress parts of ourselves just to fulfill this fundamental need. I mean, we might even manipulate our own desires and actions just to ensure that we're loved and accepted, even if it means sacrificing our own needs and our own authenticity, right? Because think about it. We're driven by a deep-seated fear of rejection, by a deep-seated fear of not being good enough or being left out. And this fear often overrides our own desires and dreams, which then lead us to conform to external expectations and cling to these behaviors that once gave us a sense of safety and acceptance. So, what happens next? We tend to avoid any form of self-expression that could risk disapproval or judgment, right? So instinctively keeping ourselves within the safe bounds of the people-pleasing role, even if it means we're feeling limited or unfulfilled, right? And this is why pursuing goals that challenge this role can feel so intimidating. Because expressing yourself fully or going after what you truly desire might require you stepping into parts of yourself that were once labeled as too much or undesirable. So, this fear of disapproval, this fear of being disliked, of being rejected, or even abandoned by others, which we've all felt at least once in our lives, right? It can feel paralyzing, which then makes it easy for you to say things like, I just feel stuck, or I can't do it. But you see that in reality, it's not that you're stuck. It's simply that you're deeply committed to maintaining the people pleaser persona. And the fear of rejection, your fear of rejection or loss of approval, it feels stronger than your own personal ambitions, which then leads you to prioritize safety over growth. All right, so you prefer staying in that little bubble of yours. But by recognizing this behavior alone, it already is the first step to reclaiming your power and expanding beyond your conditioned role, right? So with this awareness, you can begin to explore and integrate these shadow parts of yourself, knowing that real safety comes from embracing your whole self, actually, and not just the parts that have been deemed as acceptable by other people. And this is really how you start moving past the constraints of your conditioning, by stepping into a life where you're free to express yourself fully, but also authentically. And one thing I need to mention here is that I am absolutely not a fan of the typical love and light approach, right? So to me, it is complete bullshit and just a ridiculous way for people to get views, to get money, and to bypass their own shit, all right? I mean, you can create your vision boards, you can repeat your affirmations, you can write your gratitude lists every day. But without truly addressing the beliefs, the behaviors, and the patterns that run beneath your surface, you cannot create any meaningful change, right? And I need you to hear me when I say that. I am not a hater for my own benefit. I am simply being completely honest and transparent with you that this is a waste of your time, this is a waste of your energy, and this is a waste of your money. Because real transformation requires looking deeper and not just saying a few sentences into the mirror to yourself every day. And there is no way around it, right? And there's something important for you to consider, which is your life directly reflects the level of internal work you're committed to. Let me say it again. Your life directly reflects the level of internal work you're committed to. So no amount of wishful thinking or hoping that the next self-help book, podcast, or vision board will be your breakthrough can replace taking true ownership of your reality and doing the work that will actually genuinely move you forward in life. So if your life is negative and shit, it's most probably because your internal world looks the exact same. If you cannot seem to attract your manifestations, even though you wrote it down and repeated it a million times, it's probably because your internal world states the complete opposite of what you desire. Your subconscious has a completely different program than what your conscious tries to override it with. And it can't, it won't. So if you want to get everything you've dreamed of, you've got to become it first. All right? And the truth is, until you gain a clear understanding of your conditioning, of the patterns, of the beliefs, and the behaviors that shape who you are today and how you function, you will keep operating out of obligation and from what's expected of you from others. Right? And from this space, you will always be disconnected from what you truly want. Because you're still living by someone else's rules, by someone else's expectations and limitations. But I want you to know that you deserve to wake up to a life that feels almost too good to be true. A life that reflects your highest desires and deepest fulfillment. But that makes sense because you're putting in the work, right? And I always say in my classes, this is your birthright. Okay, it's your birthright to experience fulfillment, to experience joy, health, and success in every area of your life. Whether it's in your career, whether it's in your relationships, in your friendships, in your personal growth. You deserve connections where love and effort are equally reciprocated. And above all, you deserve to love yourself first and prioritize yourself deeply. And to me, this highest form of self-care is the highest form of self-care is becoming deeply self-aware, but also changing it, right? Because you can be aware and still choose to ignore it. So understanding who you are beneath all of the conditionings and expectations, so you can live fully as a woman who goes after and gets what she wants, what she desires, and creates the life of her dreams. Lets all the great things come to her by simply putting in the work and aligning with them through the internal and the external work. So as I've mentioned earlier, the true key to getting everything you desire lies in understanding the face of your people-pleasing conditioning. Okay? And my work is designed to take you through that step by step, not only because it's essential to your growth, but because I want you to truly know yourself deeply and authentically, right? I want you to have the vocabulary, understanding, and the awareness of why you are the way you are and what influences that. And obviously, how to change that. So with this awareness, you'll start to understand your patterns, your beliefs, why you play small in certain areas, and why you feel held back, which opens doors to work that creates real and lasting change. Okay? And I want you to imagine if just 1 hour together today can bring this much clarity. Could you imagine what could shift in 2 months if you're fully committed to this work? I mean, think about the potential when you commit wholeheartedly to evolving in this way. Not just for a temporary boost, but for your own lifelong transformation. And I mean, embracing this journey of self-awareness is how you stop unconsciously settling and start making empowered choices which are aligned with what you truly want and who you truly are, right? And this work is your path to becoming a woman who doesn't just dream, but who actually acts, who actually achieves, who actually thrives, right? So now, just for you to hear some words of encouragement that help me from going a people pleaser who prioritized everyone else's needs over her own, to becoming someone, a woman, who knows how to get what she truly desires. I have witnessed so many incredible women experience these kinds of life-changing shifts too. Manifesting new careers, moving abroad, meeting their ideal partners, growing together as partners, building lifelong friendships, creating unbelievable opportunities for themselves, right? And this was while I hadn't even started my business yet. So you can imagine what's about to happen in the next months, let alone years for me, right? For you. This is how I know that my work can take you from a place of feeling unfulfilled to a state of complete satisfaction in every area of your life, right? But I have done it because I have done it myself. And I continue to the work still. I still continue to work on myself. And now there's something crucial I have to say you need to commit to, and that is that you need to wholeheartedly embrace seeing and accepting parts of yourself that you may not feel entirely comfortable with right now. Just like we've explored today, right? I mean, this journey, it requires full responsibility for your life, including every decision that's led you to where you are at this moment. And as I said before, this work isn't easy. And it's certainly not always comfortable. But it is absolutely essential if you want to create real and lasting change. It's absolutely important for you to become great at holding disgusting and uncomfortable feelings like these today. But it requires practice. You cannot give up after the first few failed attempts or the first few realizations because the work is not finished there, right? You're not your most healed self just because of some questions I asked you today, right? And the more you lean into this discomfort, the sooner your life will begin to reflect what you truly deserve and desire. Not just what feels good enough or okay, right? I want it to feel great for you. Don't settle for anything less. Imagine a life where you no longer settle for just okay or good enough. And it gets to be so much better than that, right? So embracing this commitment means opening up to a life that feels rich with purpose, aligned with your dreams, and overflowing with fulfillment. Okay? The impact this work has is truly transformative. And again, I have seen so many incredible women embrace this journey and experience profound and life-changing benefits, right? Now I'll be real with you. Again, this work isn't easy in the beginning, but a commitment I made to myself and one I encourage you to make for yourself as well is to remember that it doesn't have to be easy. Like I said in the beginning of the class, it has to be worth it, right? And I can tell you with complete certainty that it is absolutely worth it. The life I'm living now, my business, my relationships, my friendships that I nurture, and the opportunities that continually come my way, they are all a direct reflection of the commitment I've made to this work. And as I said, I'm still not where I want to be. Can you imagine, can you believe how far I will get to where I want to be in the next months, in the next years with this? Stick with me long enough and you will see where we end up. Because I'm going to take you with me. So, always remember that your external world, your environment, and your experiences, they will reflect the level of inner work that you dedicate yourself to. When you know yourself deeply and you accept every part of who you are and you stay committed to evolving daily, you open doors to a life where things just flow, where opportunities align, where your world genuinely supports your highest good, right? So, with that being said, I am so proud of you for being here and taking this first step. I mean, this is truly just the beginning. And for those of you wanting to take this journey even further, I invite you to join my free Coming Home to Yourself community. So check out my Facebook community. The link is in my bio on my socials if you're not already watching it from within the community. And it's a space where you can really connect with like-minded women. You can support each other. It's there to share your self-growth. It's there to cheer each other on. It's really also a space to get more into my close proximity, where there's a lot of value. And it's all for free, right? So I promise you will find so much value in there with resources and insights designed to keep you inspired and moving forward. But whether you join a community or not, know that I'm proud of you for taking the time to invest in yourself today. And so much is about to shift for you in this newfound awareness, right? And I would love to connect with you further on social media. So please, please, please feel free to reach out and share your biggest takeaways from today's training. And just know that you are supported on this journey, okay? I'm sending you all my love, all my encouragement as you continue this work, this life-changing work. Because as I said, you deserve a life that aligns with your deepest desires, and I cannot wait to see where this journey is taking you. All right? All you got to do is put in the work for yourself. Okay? So, with that being said, that's it for today. I'll see you all in my next training. Bye bye.